In this section, we are going to take a look at workflows in detail. Difference between two popular approaches like Waterfall and Agile. What is Agile and how to deliver in Agile style. And we will take a look at an example of Agile workflow and how to apply it to your projects. So, what is Agile? Agile is a way to organize workflow to deliver projects. Agile is not only about delivery of IT projects. Any project can be organized to be delivered in Agile style. Let's start with understanding the difference between main popular workflows like Waterfall and Agile. Imagine you're to build a CRM system. The CRM system includes three features. There could be dozens and hundreds of features, but in this case, we are talking only about three, so it would be just easier for understanding. And these three features are payment module, stock module, and deals module. And for example, it takes 1 year to build all modules. So Waterfall concept says that users will be able to start using CRM in 1 year once all modules are developed and released. And now we are coming up to the Agile concept of the project delivery. Agile says that we can develop and release all modules independently. So firstly, we are developing payment module and releasing it, for example, like in 3 months. So users can already start using it. Then we develop stock module and release it, for example, during the next 3 months. So our users can already use two modules while we are developing the third module. And finally, in 1 year, we are releasing the third module. Therefore, Agile concept says that we can release valuable pieces of functionality for end users at earliest possible time. So the main difference between Waterfall and Agile is that Waterfall delivers a product as one chunk at a time, while Agile allows to split outcomes in pieces and allow users to use outcomes much earlier than Waterfall approach. Let's take a look at difference and sequence of steps to implement project in Waterfall and Agile. As you remember, in our test case, we are building CRM system. So according to Waterfall, we need first, gather and document requirements about all three modules we are to build for the CRM system. Number two, design interface and all pages for CRM. Number three, implementation, do like real coding. Number four, verify if the build system works as expected. Number five, finally, we can release our system once it successfully passes through verification. And the final step, number six, we can switch into maintenance mode to support CRM. The steps can slightly vary from project to project, but the main logic is the same. We move steadily from one step to another and release CRM system once all modules are done. Let's take a look at pros and cons of Waterfall. So, pros. Waterfall is a linear management model, so you just move from one step to another step. The outcome is crystal clear, you get at all requirements, you have a clear understanding about the final outcome. And the cons of the waterfall. It's difficult to apply scope changes. Any scope change will take a lot of time to get details and approve the change, get agreed on budget and timeline changes. While even communication can become a blocker to move on with the project if you have serious changes that drastically affects budget and time. And waterfall delays release and user testing. A user can start using a product only once all features are done. While Agile approach allows us to get the requirements about one feature, design all required components for this feature, start implementation, finally test and complete the feature and release it. Moreover, while the feature 1 is already in development, we already get the requirements for feature 2, then do design, pass into development, and move on. Then we can switch to get the requirements about feature 3 and so on. The steps to deliver a feature can vary from project to project, but the main concept is that we deliver features independently and launch a delivery flow per each feature, like gather requirements, design, implementation, verification, and release. And now imagine you are to build CRM system with 20 different modules. A waterfall approach might well never allow you to complete the project, as firstly, You need to gather all requirements that might take only like 6 months, then complete all design work another 6 months, then spend 2 years on implementation, and finally release in 3 years total. While Agile approach allows to release pieces of products steadily and give value to the business quicker. Let's talk about key Agile principles. Number one, highest priority is to satisfy the customer through the early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Number two, welcome changing requirements even late in development. Number three, deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference for the shorter timescale. Number four, business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Number five, build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support what they need, and trust them to get the job just done. Number six, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is just face-to-face conversation. 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. 8. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. 9. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. 10. Simplicity is the art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. 11. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. And the last one, 12. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective. In this course, we are going to focus on Agile approach. Agile has different workflows to organize work, like Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban, Scrum of Scrums, and so on. Sometimes people might mix up the difference, for example, between Agile and Scrum. Agile is just a concept with principle we have just taken a look previously, while Scrum and Kanban are workflows to physically organize work inside Agile. Let's focus on two basic workflows, Scrum and Kanban, to see how they work. We're going to look at Scrum and Kanban from practical perspective, without deep dive into theory, only minimum required theoretical information, as the goal of the course is to show practical aspects and allow you to start implementing knowledge in your projects right after the course. Main Scrum points. The work is split by sprints, or milestones. A sprint is just a piece of calendar days. For example, you can work within 2-week sprints. It means that 1 week just lasts 2 calendar weeks. Each sprint includes ceremonies. Ceremonies is just the same as activities. The main of them are sprint planning, daily stand-up, pre-grooming, grooming, demo, retro. The activities have their purposes and format. We will talk about them a bit later in detail. A team defines a scope of work they want to complete before the start of the sprint. You can change the sprint scope, taking into account all tasks can be delivered by the end of the sprint. And right now, let's talk about key points for Kanban. All tasks are prioritized and a team takes into work tasks with highest priority only. No strict sprint plannings as we have in Scrum. There should be a limited work in progress. It's a bad practice to take simultaneously 10 tickets into work. It's better to complete one and then move to another one. Typically, people think about Kanban as a board that have a list of all tasks that should be completed. However, Scrum also has a board and it even can have the same columns. The main difference is that Scrum splits work by sprints, as we have already mentioned, and Kanban just take tasks with the highest priorities. Let's take a look at the advantages and disadvantages. So, Scrum advantages. Number 1. Easier planning, as all work is split by sprints and you can plan project delivery easier. Number 2. Track team KPIs. For example, you can track team velocity within each sprint to understand productivity. Kanban advantages. All tasks are prioritized and a team takes into work a task with highest priority only. No strict sprint plannings as we have in Scrum that results in more flexibility. Let me give you several examples when to choose what workflow. For example, Kanban is good when you no need to strictly plan or measure scope, and it's okay to just complete tasks according to the priorities. For example, I'm managing internal marketing activities and priorities can change daily. We don't have a need to strictly plan scope of work and we can just take tickets with highest priorities. If we try to follow Scrum for the project, we will waste time on sprint planning and other activities. While Scrum is better to use when you, for example, in active phase of CRM development, you need to strictly plan scope of work for 1 year. Once the active development is done and you moved into maintenance mode, you can switch to the Kanban workflow. Before diving deeper into how to set up a workflow in Agile style, let's take a look at roles in your team. Who is going to be involved in the delivery? I'm going to show you an example of the team structure. While the hierarchy might differ from company to company, while the core principles are the same. Let's start with a software development example. On the top level, we are going to have stakeholders, people who are actually your client and they ask you to build a product for them. They take key strategical decisions about what to build. For example, we are to build CRM system with 20 modules. They also accept final work once it's done. Then we are to have project manager. Project manager responsibilities we covered in the previous section. Project manager will have his team he is to deliver a project with. Let's take a look at software development team. You're going to have product owner. In some cases, the role can be optional. Product owner is a person who owns and shares requirements for a future product. For example, CRM system. Product owner is to share how it should work from business perspective. Business analyst. In some companies, project manager also plays the role of business analyst, but BA is a person who is going to collect requirements about details of CRM functionality and document them for the team. And then we can see the rest part of the team, like developers, designers, quality assurance guys, and others. If you do other types of projects, there also could be marketers, PPC specialists, SEO specialists, support team, whoever. Let's go deeper into details of setting up a workflow in Agile style. We will focus on Scrum framework as it has a lot of useful and practical methods that you can apply to your projects. Let's go to key ceremonies in Scrum. I can remind that ceremonies is just the same as just activities. That's just a synonym that is used in Scrum methodology. Ceremonies are regular activities that happen during sprint. Sprint is a chosen piece of time that contains scope of work that should be done by definition of done by the last day of the sprint. The first ceremony is sprint planning. What is it? Sprint planning is a call where a project manager gathers a whole team who is going to be involved into work and confirms scope of work with the team. Typically, project manager prepares a list of tasks in advance that he thinks should be taken into work within upcoming sprint and present it on the call. Team members should confirm if they are fine with the scope. Important note, a team should take amount of tasks they can really complete by the end of the sprint. No need to overcommit. In the sprint, we can take only tasks that equal to definition of ready. There are two important terms in Scrum we need to know. It's definition of ready and definition of done. Let me show you an example of definition of ready. It's just a term you're getting agreed to use with your team. For example, we can consider some tasks to be equal to definition of ready if they are: 1. Task contain all requirements and materials. Number 2. Team understands all details of the task. And number 3. Team estimated task in story points. Each task that matches these points are ready to be taken into work. Each team can define their own definition of ready. The one above is example from one of my projects. You as a team have to confirm when you consider a task to be ready taken into work. The second definition is definition of done. Example of definition of done. Item 1. A task has passed quality assurance and meets acceptance criteria. Number 2. Project manager moved a task from passed quality assurance to done. The principle is the same. You as a team can define your own definition of done when you consider a task to be truly done. So going back to our sprint planning, in sprint planning, we can only put tasks that equal definition of ready. When does the sprint planning happen? Sprint planning happens once per sprint during the first day of the sprint. And typically, sprint planning goes between like 30 and 60 minutes. And all members who are going to deliver the scope of work within the sprint should join the sprint planning. For example, project manager, business analyst, tech lead, product owner, quality assurance guys, designers, developers, and stakeholders are optional. The next ceremony is daily stand-up. What is it? It's a quick call sync with the team members who is involved into the project delivery. The goal is to sync among all team members daily. Daily sync helps project manager to track progress, blockers, concerns, keep teamwork and motivation on high level. It's important for team members to see all involved members for a small talk, support and field project progress. The call should have a strict agenda. Each member reports what he did yesterday and what he is going to do today only. Any detailed discussions should happen separately, not to hold the whole team on the call. There is a typical problem when a team member reports a problem and several persons dives deep into discussion while it's not relevant for others. So project manager should keep agenda to make daily stand-up effective. The call should happen every workday, for example, from Monday to Friday. A typical duration is around 15 minutes. All team members who is involved in the delivery of the scope of work within the sprint should join the call, like project manager, business analyst, quality assurance guys, tech lead, developers, designers, DevOps, whoever. And stakeholders do not usually attend these calls. This is just a team call. The next ceremony is pre-grooming. What is it? It's a call that resolves the following tasks. Number 1. Prepare user stories to be ready for grooming. Grooming is one more ceremony when team estimates tasks. So pre-grooming helps to prepare tasks to include all requirement informations and details. How does it go? Business analyst or a person who is responsible for preparation of tasks take a developer lead or main developers on a call and present requirements of tasks. Typically, developers give feedback about some missing details, and business analyst or project manager just adds those details into the ticket. The main advantage of pre-grooming call is that it saves the whole team time during grooming ceremony, when team members estimate tasks. We will talk about grooming in several minutes, and I will show you a practice example how pre-grooming can save time of all team significantly. When and how often should we have the pre-grooming? Actually, the answer is simple: as often as you need to have enough tasks that equal definition of ready. For example, if we take one sprint that lasts 2 weeks, typically pre-grooming might happen 1 or 2 times per sprint. A typical duration of pre-grooming is 1 or 2 hours. Who should join the call? Person who creates tasks, it could be business analyst or project manager, and developer lead or main developers who have expertise to see gaps in requirements. The next ceremony is grooming. Grooming is a call during which a team goes through requirements of tasks and estimate them. The main goal of the call is to make sure tasks have all requirements and they are clear to all team members. Team can see no concerns and as a final result can estimate the task, for example, in story points or hours. Well, estimation is in hours is pretty straightforward. You just estimate how many hours a team would need to complete a task, while story points is a new terminology that I will explain just in 1 minute. And one more goal of the grooming is to have a backlog of tasks that are ready to be taken into work for at least 1 or 2 sprints ahead. The word backlog just means a list of tasks. For example, we have 10 tasks in our backlog. There is one more theoretical concept we need to get to know. It's estimation in story points. That's pretty commonly used approach to estimate work within Scrum framework. Story points, that's just a range of numbers from 0 to eternity, and you, for example, estimate that it will take 5 story points to build main navigation of the website. Then you have a next task to build authentication, and you understand that it's at least 3 times more complex than to build navigation. Then it will take 15 story points to build authentication. Story points is an abstract value you as a team get agreed to use. Estimation is always based on complexity of tasks comparing to each other. For example, as a starting point, you get agreed that to build a page slider is going to take 3 story points. You as a team can just guess as you need to have like a starting point. Then, when you estimate the second task, you need to compare the complexity based of already estimated task. For example, as a second task, you're going to integrate payment module. You understand that it's 5 times more complex comparing to a slider task. Then it's going to be 15 story points, and so on. To avoid having a mess in numbers, it's recommended to use Fibonacci numbers. So you are to choose any number from this sequence, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 8, etc. Why do we need story points? Story points allows to track team velocity that you can use for planning future work and monitoring productivity. For example, you take into sprint 10 tasks with total estimation of 50 story points. Therefore, you can compare planned scope of work versus completed. And you can compare velocity among sprints. For example, within sprint 1, team completed tasks for 30 story points. Sprint 2 for 30 story points again. And within sprint 3, team completed tasks for 40 story points. The average team velocity is 33 story points. And you can rely on these numbers during sprint planning. You can just pick up tasks in total for 33 story points for all upcoming sprints. Important note, you can't compare different teams based off story points. For example, you have team 1 and team 2, and as we mentioned earlier, team 1 can get agreed to complete a slider at 3 story points, while team 2 can agree to complete it within 5 story points. It doesn't mean that team 1 works slower, it just means that they have chosen another grade. So it means story points can give you a value when you measure velocity inside the same team only. Story points is a deep theoretical concept, and I will give you some more practical examples in the insights section. For now, I just want to give you a basic understanding about the concept. I will share more practice cases how to use story points in the insights and scope management sections. Let's take a look how grooming typically happens on practice. Let me show you how estimation of user stories in story points is happening like in real world. If you, for example, work with a team offline, you can, yes, use like real cards that have like numbers on them, and each like team member just shows, okay, how many story points he would like to assign to this ticket. But if we work online, there is a pretty lot amount of different online tools that will allow you to play this story poker. It's called like story poker online. And who should actually take part in this estimation? Each team member who is like working with a task. In our case, for example, it's a software development case, and we need to estimate a task
from perspective to deliver it to definition of done. So it means that in this process, for example, we know that developers will take part and quality assurance guys. So these all guys should put story points for each user story. And for example, I typically work online with my teams and we use Slack as our main tool for communication. And Slack has built-in widgets for story poker. Let's take a look. I can type in slash, then start typing in like story, and yes, I can see like the first comment, for example, story poker. It works for me. And I can type in the name of the task we would like to estimate. For example, log in feature. Let's click enter. And each team member who is a member of this chat, for example, in Slack, will see this message and he can just pick amount of story points he would like to assign to this task. For example, 3. Once everyone is done, you can ask this on the call. Hey guys, please estimate. Once everyone is done, you can click the button reveal and you will see a list of all users and what story points they have set for a task. There could be a typical case when, for example, one team member assigned 3 story points, another 5, someone 9, and you as a team need to communicate to get agreed. Okay, what will be the common decision? What number you would like to assign to the ticket? And you as a project manager need to give a voice to each team member who would like to argument, for example, okay, why he thinks that there should be 5 or another amount of story points. It's just an example inside Slack, but actually you can Google online. There is a lot of different online tools that will allow you to do this story poker planning online.
And now let's quickly go back to the pre-grooming call. Do you remember I've mentioned the importance of pre-grooming? There is a typical problem during grooming call. For example, we groom a first task, build a sign-up form on the website, and developers start revealing gaps or missing requirements. Not all required fields described, not all logic explained, for example, if we should have validation on the forms, etc. And it means that only one developer is figuring out details of one ticket, while designers, quality assurance guys, project manager, and other team members are just sitting on the call and listening to conversation between business analyst and the developer. It's just a waste of time of all team members. That's why we need to have pre-grooming calls where business analyst and developer only, like for example 2 people, can validate all requirements inside tickets and then only estimate them during groomings with the rest part of the team. A typical duration of the grooming is 1 or 2 hours. The next ceremony is demo. What is it? It's a call, the main goal of which is to show completed scope of work within the completed sprint to stakeholders. We do a demo of tasks that equal definition of done, so that are truly completed. Typically, it's just a call with screen sharing that happens once after completion of each sprint. The demo is run by business analyst or quality assurance guy or project manager, so by a person who knows details of functionality and able to explain what has been done and show results. Demo is a crucial activity that resolves the following tasks. Show progress and output to stakeholders. Align on expectations with stakeholders. It's a good time when you need to ask if results look good and meet stakeholders' expectations. If there are some concerns, project manager can make adjustments in priorities, requirements, etc. It's better to align about progress regularly to avoid case when you, for example, develop a project for 1 year, then stakeholders decide to take a look about outcomes and find out core functionality just works in the wrong way. So who should join the demo? Key team members who would be able to answer common potential questions and stakeholders. A typical duration of the call is around 1 hour. And the last ceremony is retrospective, or it's usually called just retro. So what is it? It's a call that happens with all team members who took part in the delivery of work inside sprint. And it's a time to talk about what team did well during sprints and what can be improved. After the call, you should have a list of action items, what can be improved with the next sprints. And the main goal of the retro is to take one or two of them and try to fix with the next sprint. Don't try to fix all problems at once. It's better to fix one by one during upcoming sprints. How often should a retro happen? I would recommend having retros at least once per several sprints. It could be too excessive to have after each sprint. Typically, it's up to a project.
Here is an example of the workflow that can be used for the tickets. And this is an example exactly for the software development project that I'm using for one of my projects. So let's take a look firstly at the possible ticket statuses. So a ticket can be in the status like to do, in progress, check it in, ready for QA. Then there could be two different states if it's quality assurance passed or QA failed. Then ready for product owner, or it can be called as done within a sprint. And then a ticket can be either product owner accepted or product owner failed. Let's take a look at responsibilities. Who is actually gonna change the statuses of the tickets? So a ticket is assigned to a person at the very end of the sprint, and from to do to in progress, a developer have to change the status of a ticket. So once he takes a ticket into work, so it's developer's responsibility to change the status from to do to in progress. Then once the ticket is done, a developer is creating a pull request in the GitHub and changes the status of the ticket from in progress to check it in. Then once the feature is deployed to the QA environment, it's developer's responsibility to change the status of the ticket to ready for quality assurance. Once the ticket has the status ready for QA, our quality assurance guy knows that he has to go to the QA environment, take a look at the requirements inside the ticket, and start testing the ticket itself. Then it's up to QA already to either pass the ticket if everything works as expected or fail the ticket. If a ticket fails, it's already responsibility of the developer to take a look at this ticket and take it into work back. If ticket passed quality assurance, it's already up to project manager to validate once more if he would like, or probably he relies on QA only and move the ticket into the done. And in our case, definition of done also means that ticket is ready for product owner. For example, in our product development flow, we have these two extra steps that product owner has also to validate all tickets that are done and either accept them or fail, just to double check that the product works as product owner actually expects. There is also one more interesting status that we should take a look at. One more interesting status is a blocked status. To block status, a ticket can get from quality assurance step or from in progress. For example, there could be a case when QA guy is testing a ticket and then he understands that something doesn't work as expected and we need to, for example, validate some requirements or get credentials or change something drastically in requirements, or we realize that we cannot implement something exactly the way it's described in the ticket and we need to communicate with someone, so such ticket can get into the blocked status. Or, for example, a developer can take a task into work and then realize that, for example, okay, we cannot implement this integration. And this ticket can get the blocked status, and it's like a signal for the project manager to take a look at this task, at the issues, and then start resolving this in a manual mode. Okay, what should be done? Either we're just waiting for some credentials to continue implementation, or probably we do not even need to implement this ticket and just reject it. We have taken a look at the workflow like in theory, in the diagram, but here how the workflow looks, for example, in Jira, in real working environment. So we have these statuses like to do, in progress, we have blocked, we have check it in, approved, ready for QA, failed, passed QA, etc. And here, for example, how the whole workflow looks in Jira that is already set up. So we can see the same status is just in the view of the diagram.
We have already told a lot about sprints, but I believe you might have a question, okay, how to choose sprint timeline? If it's gonna be 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month sprint, so how to define? There is no special obligation about sprint timeline. There are just some indicators that project manager should take a look at to define sprint timeline. Number one, ability to move essential amount of tasks to definition of done. For example, if you make 1 week sprint, this can be challenging just to have time to develop the scope of work, to test it and then demo it. While 1 month could be too big piece of time. And number two, there could be also another case. While you have a product that requires to release new features to production on a weekly basis, then team will have to follow 1 week sprints. However, typically 2 week sprints work for majority of projects. Well, we have covered all main entities we face during work in agile style. People, their roles, and in what ceremonies they take part throughout a sprint. And the workflow that organizes tasks and their statuses. Right now, we need to take a look at last entity, task types, and an approach that could be used to differentiate and organize tasks.
There are five main task types. It's epic, user story, improvement, bug, and research. Let's imagine we are building an authentication functionality for a web application. So the whole authentication can be called as an epic. It's like a top level container for a task. Then we can split the task to subtasks, for example, login and sign up functionality. So such tasks can be called as user stories. Then let's imagine we have built the authentication module and later we got a new requirement to add a forgot password functionality. So this requirement hasn't existed initially. So such task we can call as an improvement. So that's something new that has been added to initial epic and user stories. Then let's go to a bug. We can call a bug everything that doesn't work as expected or as it's described in the acceptance criteria in Epic or user story. And the last task type is research. In some cases, we need to do like a research, for example, to estimate a task how much time it will take to integrate a payment module. So it's not like a real implementation task, but still we need to track the work and estimate how much time we will spend for this task type. During each sprint, you can face a typical problem when quality assurance team creates too much bugs that do not allow you to complete a user story within each sprint. While in some cases you really need to do releases of features as soon as possible and you cannot wait till you fix literally each bug for each user story. That's why it's recommended to split bugs according to the priorities. There could be four main priority types. It's blocker, high priority, medium, and low. And as a team, we can get agreed if a bug has like a blocker or high priority. So yes, then such user story we cannot move to done till such bugs are completed. And bugs that have medium and low priority we can just fix within upcoming sprints. How to differentiate if it's a blocker, high, medium, or low priority bug? As a team, we can get agreed that, for example, we consider a blocker each bug that literally blocks working of functionality. For example, if we're building authentication module and you try to log in into a user account and you cannot due to some kind of errors, so it's a blocker. And as for the high priority, for example, we have sign up form, but validation doesn't work as expected. So technically, yeah, you can go through the sign up process, but validation do not validate the inputs correctly. So this is a high priority bug that should be definitely fixed before releasing this feature. And as for medium and low priorities, there could be, for example, like mismatches in wording, or for example, some kind of paddings or margins are wrong for some pages, like some styles defects, etc. So something that doesn't literally affect the functionality as a whole, and application can work without these fixes. So this approach to split tasks on these groups and using these priorities will help you to effectively manage and split the scope and make regular releases and not block absolutely each user story but a huge amount of bugs.
I would like to close out this section with some useful insights. What to do if user story is partially completed in the end of the sprint? There are two options. Option number one, just move the whole story into a new sprint, but if you track team velocity, then you won't be able to understand what has been completed within previous sprint and what's within the next one. So here we're coming up with option 2. If you want to track team velocity, you can just separate an uncompleted part into a new ticket and add it to a new sprint. And then just close the original ticket with the completed scope of work. A typical trap during grooming is when a ticket doesn't have enough requirements and a team tries to fill in gaps during all grooming time for one ticket only. If tickets don't have enough requirements for estimation and you spend more than 10 minutes to add details, just skip the ticket. Typically, if you estimate user stories at more than 13 story points, such user stories should be split on 2 or more user stories, as it's easier to deliver work when it's split on smaller chunk of works. Track team velocity in story points and hours. Ask developers to add estimation in hours and log spend time directly into tickets. So in the end of sprint, you can easily track estimated versus spent hours, and story points will help you to track team velocity. Typically, clients are not active during demos and you can't get a sufficient feedback. Stakeholders are not active during demos, and in a while it appears that something works not as they expected. You can ask stakeholders to sign off after each demo, so they will have to be involved. And the last idea I would like to share with you is how to use Scrumban. So Scrumban, as you can understand from the word, it's a mixture of Scrum and Kanban approaches. When it's good to use it? When, for example, you have internal project, you don't need to have a strict planning and you just want a flexibility to work with tasks according to their priorities. But still, you want to measure team velocity and understand what you completed each week. Thanks for watching this section of the course and see you during the next section. Cheers.